My name's Isaac, and I'm 30 now, but some memories don't fade. They ferment, get sharper with time. I don't talk about my childhood much. Not because I've forgotten, but because saying it out loud makes it feel real again. Like I'm 12 and standing in the middle of that gas station parking lot all over again. Clutching a candy bar I didn't have money to pay for, watching my parents' taillights vanish into the night. It happened in August, right before school started. We'd gone on one of those awkward, family bonding trips my mom always insisted we needed. Except bonding, in our house, meant everyone pretending my dad's rants were wisdom and my older brother Caleb's every mediocre thought was a gift to mankind. I was the quiet one, too sensitive, too soft-spoken, always in the way. On that particular day, I'd spilled a Sprite in the back seat. Caleb, who was 16 then and already a master at deflecting blame, smirked and said I did it on purpose. Dad pulled over at the next gas station off the highway, eyes blazing. "You're not a baby anymore," he barked. "You want to act grown, you can figure your own way home." At first I laughed. I thought it was one of his twisted jokes. But then the back of the SUV slammed shut and they just drove. I ran after them for a second, calling their names, but my voice cracked and disappeared under the roar of engines and tires. A clerk poked his head out from the gas station door, cigarette dangling from his lips, and gave me a look like I was just another stray someone had dumped. That night, I slept behind the station's dumpster, curled into myself, heart pounding every time a car passed. I remember counting the hours. 80 miles from home. No money. No phone. Not a single soul to call. The clerk refused to help when I asked. "Ain't a daycare, kid," he muttered. I didn't cry. I think that part of me froze that night, the part that believed family meant anything unshakable. Eventually, I found a payphone the next morning and called a teacher I trusted, Mrs. Valencia. She was the one who picked me up and took me back to town. I told her my parents must have forgotten me. She didn't believe it. I could tell by the way she tightened her grip on the steering wheel. But she didn't press. She just dropped me off, made sure I had food, and told me I could always call her. When I walked through the front door of our house, no one looked surprised. No one said sorry. Mom glanced up from her laptop and said, "Took you long enough." Caleb was on the couch playing video games and muttered, "Should have walked faster." Dad never even acknowledged it happened. Just nodded at me the next morning at breakfast like everything was normal. That was the day I stopped trying to belong. I finished high school like a ghost in the hallway. Ate lunch alone. Studied in silence. I got out as soon as I turned 18. Worked 3 jobs. Put myself through community college, then transferred to a university across the country without telling anyone. I changed my number, never left a forwarding address, and for the first time, started breathing on my own. I've spent the last decade building a life they know nothing about. I became a software engineer. Moved to a city where no one ever said the words "man up" like it was a cure for trauma. I have friends who think of me as grounded and loyal. I even adopted a rescue dog named Max, a skittish little mutt who flinches at raised voices. We understand each other. I never thought I'd hear from them again. But last week, a letter showed up at my apartment. No return address, but the handwriting on the front, loopy, dramatic, was unmistakably Mom's. I opened it slowly, half expecting some legal threat or another passive-aggressive note about abandoning the family. But instead, it was a thick envelope. Inside, a wedding invitation from Caleb. Engraved in gold lettering, all showy and traditional. The kind of thing that screamed rented elegance and fake smiles. And tucked inside was a folded piece of notebook paper. Handwritten. From them. "Isaac, we know things have been distant between us, but Caleb is getting married, and it would mean a lot to the family if you could attend. He asked that we reach out to you personally. We hope you'll come. We'd love to reconnect." Mom and Dad. Reaching out. Like nothing ever happened. Like they hadn't left me to rot behind a gas station dumpster when I was 12 and never once apologized. Like Caleb wasn't the golden boy whose shadow I was never allowed to step out of. I sat there staring at the note for a long time. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper until it crinkled. And for a moment, I almost tossed it into the trash. Almost. But then, something in me paused. I flipped the invitation over. Fancy venue. Outdoor ceremony. Dress code. Formal. There was even a QR code to RSVP. As if I were just another distant relative. As if they hadn't taught me what it meant to be disposable. I stared at the note again. It would mean a lot to the family. Interesting. Because I wasn't the same kid they dumped on the side of the highway anymore. And if they wanted me back in the picture, I had a few ideas about how I could frame it. Let's just say I didn't RSVP right away. But I did start planning. Quietly. Carefully. Like I always have. Because some debts don't get paid in words, they get paid in presence. And sometimes, showing up is the loudest thing you can do. The moment I saw Caleb's fiance's name, Emily R. Kensington, printed in embossed cursive on the invitation, I knew exactly what kind of wedding this was going to be. Upper middle class perfection, long games, live quartet, personalized cocktail napkins with their initials. The Kensingtons were local royalty back in my hometown. Old money, old gossip, old grudges. I remembered Emily vaguely from school, always dressed like she was heading to church or a job interview, even at age 15. The kind of girl who never had to fight for attention because it was given to her like an inheritance. So Caleb landed her. Of course he did. The charming oldest son, quarterback smile, parents who orbited around him like he was the sun. My parents probably wore their approval like jewelry. I looked her up online that same night. She was everything you'd expect. Dental school grad, curated Instagram with inspirational quotes and cappuccino art, engagement photos under a tree that looked like it came from a wedding magazine. And there, buried in the tags of one post, was a link to their wedding website. I clicked it. Welcome to Caleb and Emily's big day. Countdown, 3 weeks. Location, Stonebrook Vineyard and Lodge. Registry, Bloomingdale's, Crate and Barrel, Amazon. Dress code, black tie optional. Please arrive 30 minutes before the ceremony begins. Shuttle transportation available from the guest hotel. We are so excited to celebrate with friends and family. Family, right. There was even a section titled The Love Story. Caleb had written it himself. Or, at least, it was written from his perspective. It was all so polished it could have been written by a PR firm. I was always the kind of guy who believed in fate. But nothing prepared me for Emily. Her grace, her kindness, the way she looked at me and saw more than just the guy I used to be. More than the guy you used to be? I read that line 3 times. And then I remembered what he used to be. A bully in khakis. A liar with a halo. The same boy who'd once pushed me into a pond at my own 12th birthday party and told our parents I slipped. I had to walk home soaked while everyone else ate cake. They laughed about it for years. I wasn't planning to go to the wedding. Not until I saw that line. Because here was Caleb, rewriting his own history. Pretending there was no collateral damage in the path he took to manhood. And now the same people who left me behind, literally, were calling me family again. I didn't RSVP online. That would have been too easy. Instead, I used an old friend from college, Jenny, who now works in logistics, to send me a high-end formal suit. Custom fit, midnight blue, with a vest that looked like it belonged in a James Bond film. I even booked a room at the same luxury guest hotel listed on the site, paying up front and under a slightly different name. I didn't want them to know I was coming. Not yet. I figured if they were going to try to pretend the past didn't exist, I'd give them a taste of their own game. 2 weeks before the wedding, I sent a single email to the RSVP address provided. It was Emily's, saying, "Looking forward to the celebration. Please don't mention I'm attending. I'd like to surprise the happy couple. Isaac." No reply, but it was marked as read. The week leading up to the wedding, I cleared my schedule, prepped my dog Max with a sitter, and packed light. Just the suit, a pair of polished shoes, and one old photo, folded and worn, of me at 12 years old, standing outside that gas station, with a backpack and a blank stare. Mrs. Valencia had taken it the morning she picked me up. She'd printed it years later and mailed it to me with a note that simply said, "You survived." I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet, but it felt right to bring it. When I arrived at the vineyard the day before the wedding, the place looked like a set from a movie. Rolling hills, polished wooden beams, fairy lights strung through archways. Perfect weather, perfect people. Every detail was calculated to broadcast warmth and elegance, but the kind that excluded people like me by design. The rehearsal dinner was in full swing. I watched from a quiet corner of the outdoor terrace, sunglasses on, suit jacket folded over my arm. No one noticed me at first, and then I saw her. Mom. She looked thinner than I remembered, like a balloon that had slowly deflated but tried to maintain its shape. Her hair was dyed a deeper brown, almost reddish, and she wore a pearl necklace that clashed with her sunburnt neckline. She was laughing, that high, brittle laugh that always sounded like she was trying to convince everyone she was fine. And beside her, Dad, wearing a blazer that probably still had the same money clip in the inside pocket, the one he used to flick open dramatically whenever he wanted to remind us he was providing. His face was puffier than I remembered, like life had finally started pushing back. They were talking to Emily's parents, smiling, shaking hands, praising Caleb with that same sugary tone that once made my skin crawl. I didn't approach them. Not yet. But then Caleb turned, and for the first time in almost 2 decades, we locked eyes. And his face dropped. Not enough to alert anyone else. But I saw it. The flicker. The unspoken, "What is he doing here?" that passed across his perfectly groomed expression. He raised a glass at me, hesitated, then quickly turned away like he hadn't seen me at all. But I knew he had. And more importantly, now I knew he hadn't told them I was coming. I slipped out before the toast, walked back to the hotel, heart buzzing with adrenaline. My hands were shaking slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. They had asked me to come. They wanted me to be part of the family again. I was about to show them exactly what that meant. And I hadn't even opened my mouth yet. The morning of the wedding arrived cloaked in mist and tension. I stood at the floor-length window of my hotel room, watching fog roll across the Vineyard Hills like something out of a movie. I barely slept. Not from nerves. I wasn't nervous, but from memory. My mind replayed it all like a silent reel. The cold pavement behind the gas station, the look on Mrs. Valencia's face when she pulled up, the silence at home when I returned. I ironed my shirt slowly, deliberately, pressing out every crease like it was a scar I could flatten. Then I reached for the old photo. Folded. Faded. 12-year-old me staring into the distance, eyes wide with something between fear and disbelief. I slid it into my breast pocket, behind a silk square, close to my chest. The shuttle to the vineyard was full of guests who didn't know me. Distant cousins, old neighbors, Emily's college friends. Everyone chattered about the venue, the view, the dress. No one looked my way. I preferred it that way. When I stepped off the shuttle, the place had transformed. White chairs fanned out across the grass like dominoes. A floral arch stood center stage, thick with ivory roses and pale greenery. Classical music floated in the air, and waiters passed around glasses of Prosecco like it was liquid gold. It was, frankly, stunning. I kept to the back. I saw them again. My parents, now seated in the front row, beaming at guests, shaking hands with the officiant. Dad laughed too loudly. Mom clutched a bouquet of white lilies that didn't suit her at all. Caleb stood off to the side in a tailored tuxedo, talking to someone I assumed was his best man. And Emily, well, she hadn't appeared yet. That's when it happened. An older woman, elegant, silver hair, a navy blue dress, approached me. She stared at me for a beat, then smiled politely. "You must be Isaac." I blinked. "I am. I'm Evelyn Kensington, Emily's mother." "Of course." I straightened slightly and extended my hand. She took it with grace, but also something else, curiosity. "Caleb told us you might be here. I just wanted to say, thank you for coming." My guard went up instantly. "He told you I might come?" She nodded, her smile tightening. "He said there had been some distance, but he hoped this would be a step toward healing." I could have laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "He's an optimist." She smiled again, more awkwardly this time. "Well, regardless, welcome. And if you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask." I watched her walk away, her heels digging slightly into the grass. So Caleb had told Emily's side of the family, but not mine. Interesting. The ceremony started like any other. Gentle music, guests shifting in their seats, the officiant clearing his throat. And then Emily appeared, glowing, perfect, exactly the image you'd expect. The collective breath of the crowd drew in and held. She walked down the aisle to soft applause. Caleb waited under the arch like a prince accepting his crown. And I watched it all from the back row, silent. The ceremony was short. Predictable vows. Nervous laughter. I-do-s exchanged like currency. Then came the announcement, the kiss, and the clapping. And just like that, they were married. The reception was where it all started to unravel. It was held in a massive glass-walled hall overlooking the vineyard. Chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. Every table had a centerpiece of orchids and floating candles. Guests were directed to their seats via printed calligraphy cards. Mine didn't exist. I wandered casually to the table where my parents sat. Empty chair beside them. Name card. Reserved for family. I hovered. Mom's eyes landed on me. "Oh, you made it," she said, sipping wine, not even standing. "Apparently," I said. Dad didn't speak. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, then leaned back slightly like I was a question he didn't want to answer. "I didn't see a seat card for me," I said calmly. Mom shrugged. "Must have been a mistake. Maybe you're at one of the other tables. We didn't handle the seating arrangements." "Sure you didn't." I glanced around. Tables were nearly full. Laughter rose from all directions. And then I spotted Caleb across the room, deep in conversation with Emily and two older gentlemen in tuxedos. He saw me. He didn't smile. Instead, He walked directly toward me. "Hey," he said, dropping his voice low. "Glad you could make it." "No thanks to you," I replied. He exhaled. "Listen, I didn't think you'd actually come. But you invited me. I asked Mom and Dad to invite you. That's different." My jaw clenched. "I figured you'd see the invite, toss it, and move on. Like you always do," he said. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Tan, styled, confident. A man who'd never truly paid for anything in blood or silence. "I came because I wanted to see if you remembered," I said quietly. "Remember what?" I didn't answer. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the photo. I held it up, letting it speak. His expression shifted, subtle, but real. Eyes darted to the photo, then to my face, then back. He swallowed. "That was years ago." "Yes," I said. "And you never said a word. Never told them to turn back. Never checked if I made it home alive." He looked around, like someone might overhear. "Isaac, it was one bad night. You were dramatic even then. I thought you were over it." "Over it?" Something inside me stilled. "I'm not here to ruin your wedding," I said. "You can relax." He gave a short, hollow laugh. "Good. But I am staying until the speeches." He looked at me again, as if he wasn't sure whether I was bluffing. I wasn't. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It's surgical. And I had a toast prepared. One they'd never forget. The ballroom lights dimmed as waiters cleared the last of the dinner plates. Guests buzzed in a champagne haze, some leaning back with full stomachs, others dancing in polite little circles to a four-piece jazz band tucked in the corner. Caleb and Emily sat at a long head table, their names in gold script behind them. Everything sparkled, the wine glasses, the forks, even the people. A man in a powder blue suit clinked his glass. The room quieted. It's time for a few words from the people who know the bride and groom best. There was polite applause, and Emily's father stood to speak first. His voice was smooth, rehearsed, a blend of wealth and warmth. He talked about Emily's childhood, her dreams, the first time she mentioned Caleb. He even cracked a joke about Caleb being so charming, we didn't even realize he was trying to marry up. Everyone laughed. Next came the best man, Caleb's college roommate, who kept things light and funny. Something about frat parties, Caleb's inability to cook, and how lucky he was to have found Emily. It was the kind of speech you expect, a little heart, a little humor, no sharp edges. Then the MC took the mic again and glanced down at a list. "And finally, we have a special toast from Isaac." The room went quiet. All eyes shifted. My parents froze mid-sip. Caleb's jaw tightened. Emily blinked in confusion. And I stood up. I walked slowly to the mic, ignoring the awkward shifting around me. A few guests whispered. Some looked puzzled. Others simply stared, unsure of who I was or why I was speaking. I tapped the mic once. It rang through the room. "Good evening," I said, voice steady. "I'm Isaac, Caleb's younger brother." A few heads turned sharply now. The words landed like a ripple in still water. I could almost hear the murmurs begin to circulate. "He has a brother?" "I wasn't sure I was going to come tonight," I continued. "In fact, I spent the last few weeks thinking about whether I should. You see, I haven't spoken to my family in 18 years. Silence. Not the good kind. The kind that sucks the air out of the room. I got a wedding invitation out of nowhere. No call. No email. Just a card and a note that said, "It would mean a lot to the family if you came." I let the words sit. Then I pulled the photo from my pocket. This is me at 12 years old. I held it up between two fingers. Guests craned their necks to see. This was taken the morning after my parents left me at a gas station 80 miles from home. I had spilled a soda in the car, and instead of scolding me, they left. Told me to man up and figure it out. The crowd shifted. Uneasy glances. The sound of a wine glass being gently set down. They didn't come back. They didn't call. I slept behind a dumpster. The only reason I made it home was because a teacher picked me up the next day. I never got an apology. Not from my parents. Not from Caleb. And until this wedding invitation arrived, I thought they were all perfectly happy pretending I didn't exist. I looked at my parents. Dad's face was pale. Mom's mouth hung slightly open, as if she was trying to summon a response but couldn't find one fast enough. "Now, I'm not here to ruin anyone's evening," I said. "Emily, you seem lovely. Your family has been kind and welcoming. And Caleb, well, you've always known how to put on a good face." That line hit hard. His expression cracked for just a moment. But I think weddings are about honesty. About truth. And it wouldn't be honest if I stood here tonight pretending that we were ever close. Or that I grew up in a house where family meant protection, not survival. The room was stone silent now. People barely breathed. I was invited to this wedding to play a part in a picture-perfect day. A prop, really. A brother-shaped placeholder. I look back at Caleb. So consider this my gift to you. I placed the photo on the head table, right in front of him. A reminder of what family looks like when you turn your back on it. Then I turned, slowly, and walked away from the mic. No applause. Just stunned silence and a few audible gasps. And as I walked past my parents' table, I heard my mother hiss my name. Barely a whisper. My father started to rise, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I exited through the side of the hall and walked out into the cool night, the music now distant behind me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I was free. But freedom is a strange thing. It doesn't always come with peace right away. Sometimes it just leaves a silence behind, the kind that makes you wonder what happens next. I had made my move, but the fallout, that was still coming. The drive back to the hotel was quiet. No jazz band, no clinking glasses, no performative laughter echoing off marble walls. Just the hum of tires against the gravel and the low whir of my thoughts catching up with me. I didn't go back to my room right away. Instead, I took a walk down one of the vineyard trails behind the hotel, winding between rows of dark grapevines under a moonlit sky. The tension in my chest had unraveled, thread by thread, with every step I took away from that wedding hall. I could still hear my mom's sharp gasp, see Caleb's carefully composed face fracture in real time, and feel the confused stares of strangers trying to connect that had been deliberately erased from the family photo. For most of my life, I believed I was the ghost in my own family. But tonight, I had reminded them I was flesh and blood and memory. And memory is a dangerous thing, especially when the people around you rely on forgetting. Back at the hotel, I found a voicemail waiting. From a number I didn't recognize. Isaac, it's Emily. Her voice was low, calm, but brittle. I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect that. I wish someone had told me. I just wanted you to know I'm not mad you said what you did. You deserve to. And I'm sorry. She hung up without giving me a number to call back. That was the first apology I'd received in 18 years. And it wasn't even from my family. I left early the next morning. No breakfast. No drawn-out goodbyes. Just a short email to the front desk asking them to cancel the rest of my reservation and send me the final bill. I didn't feel like waiting around to see the aftermath. I knew my parents. I knew Caleb. They'd either pretend it never happened or scramble to spin it into a misunderstanding. Maybe both. But I also knew the photo was still sitting on the head table when I left. I kept the suit, tossed the tie, went home. And once I was home, really home, in my small apartment where Max greeted me with excited barks and a wagging tail, something strange happened. People started reaching out. First, it was my cousin Hannah. She messaged me on LinkedIn, said she'd heard about the speech from someone at the wedding and wanted to apologize for never asking where I went after I disappeared. Said she always thought it was weird how no one ever mentioned me again, but assumed it was her place not to ask. We talked for a while. She asked if she could visit. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. Then came a message from Mrs. Valencia. She still remembered. Still had the photos she'd taken. I always wondered what happened to you, she wrote. I'm so proud of you, Isaac. I hadn't cried in years, but I did that night. It wasn't loud, just a quiet, aching kind of release. The kind you feel after holding your breath for too long and finally exhaling. I started sleeping better, waking up earlier. I found a new rhythm. My job felt easier. My code cleaner. I took Max on longer walks. Started writing again. Short stories, essays, anything to pour the storm in my head into something that made sense. A week later, I got an email from a woman who worked at a nonprofit for estranged adults, children who had been cut off, disowned, or abandoned. She'd heard about the wedding speech through a friend of a friend who worked the event and thought it was the most quietly powerful thing she'd ever heard. She asked if I'd be willing to speak at one of their private retreats. Not as a motivational speaker, just as someone who lived it. I said yes. That one event turned into 2, then 4. Then an invitation to sit on a panel at a university symposium about family estrangement and trauma recovery. I didn't wear the suit to those, just a simple shirt, jeans, sometimes a blazer if I wanted to look a little more polished. But I always carried the photo. I'd show it when I spoke. Tell the story exactly as it happened. No embellishment, just truth. And every time, someone came up to me afterward and said, "That happened to me too." I wasn't alone. I never had been. My voice, the same one they used to call too soft, too sensitive, too quiet, had finally found its volume. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was power. And with every person I helped, every story I heard, Every hand I shook, I felt it grow, not the anger, but the clarity, the certainty. Because while Caleb went back to his new wife and polished reputation, he didn't realize the ripple I'd started, or the fact that I wasn't finished. Because soon, someone else from their side would come looking, and they'd want answers. It started with an email. From Emily. Again. But this time, it wasn't short, or polite, or carefully composed. This one was raw. Isaac, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did your parents really leave you? Like that? At 12? I asked Caleb. He didn't deny it. He just said, it's complicated. But you didn't sound complicated when you told that story. You sounded clear, like someone who's been carrying something heavy for a long time. If it's true, I need to know more. Please. I stared at the message for a long time. Emily had every reason to shut the door and move on. She could have ignored me, spun it in her head as family drama, written me off as bitter or unstable. But she didn't. She asked for truth, and I wasn't going to waste that. So I replied. I told her everything. No dramatics, no exaggeration, just the sequence of facts. I told her about the gas station, the silence when I returned, how I put myself through school, the way my name was never mentioned again, how they'd rewritten the family photo like I was a smudge they could crop out. I didn't blame her. I didn't ask her to pick sides. I just gave her the truth and let it sit. She replied the next day, I believe you. And I need time to process this. They never told me. Caleb said he was an only child until we got engaged. They erased you. And now I'm wondering what else they've rewritten. Would you ever be willing to meet for coffee? Just the two of us. It was like watching a crack form in a window that had always been spotless. I knew better than to push. I said yes, but I let her set the time and place. We met a week later, in a quiet cafe, 2 towns away from her and Caleb's home. She wore no makeup, no pearls, none of the bridal polish. Just a hoodie and jeans, hair pulled back, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. When she sat down, she didn't even say hello. She just asked, what else did they do? So I told her, not everything. Not the little humiliations, the 1,000 small cuts that never bled enough for anyone else to notice, but the big ones. Like when my mom forgot my birthday 2 years in a row and then blamed me for not reminding her. Or when dad refused to co-sign a small student loan, saying, you'll just waste it, while handing Caleb $5,000 for a trip to Cancun. Emily's hand stayed wrapped around her mug the entire time. She asked questions, took mental notes. She didn't try to defend them, just listened. And finally, she said, they called you a ghost. At the wedding. That's how Caleb explained you. Said you vanished when you were a teen. Said you always had a flair for the dramatic. I blinked. They used the word ghost? She nodded. I couldn't help but laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurdly perfect. They didn't lose a son, I said. They buried one. Emily went quiet, then leaned in, her voice low. You know what scares me most? I waited. She whispered, what if they do that to our kids someday? And there it was. The shift. The doubt had taken root. And Caleb didn't know. Emily stood before she could say anything more. She said she needed time, said she was grateful, said she wasn't ready to talk to him just yet. But she'd be in touch. That was 3 days before I got a letter in the mail. No return address again. Just like before. But this time, the handwriting wasn't my mom's. It was my father's. And inside, a note scrawled in rigid, uneven letters. Isaac, I don't know what you think you're doing. This isn't helping anyone. You're bringing shame on the family. Let it go. If you keep stirring things up, there will be consequences. We gave you a second chance to be included. Don't make us regret it. Dad. There it was. No apology. No regret. Just threat disguised as dignity. I sat with the note for a moment. Then I placed it next to the photo of 12-year-old me. 2 artifacts of the same legacy. And I smiled. Because now I had what I needed. Proof. Words, written by his own hand, revealing exactly who he was, and still is. I scanned the letter, saved it to a secure folder, and backed it up to 2 cloud drives. Then I picked up my phone. I called a journalist. Someone I'd met at one of the trauma panels. She'd told me once, if you ever decide to share your story, I'll help you do it right. She answered on the first ring. I'm ready, I said. But I don't want to just talk. I want to show them. She paused, then said, how far are you willing to go? I looked down at the note, at the photo, at the name on the return invite that tried to erase me. All the way, I said. The article was published under the title, Left Behind, One Man's Quiet Escape from a Family That Tried to Erase Him. It went live on a Tuesday morning. By noon, it had already been shared thousands of times. The journalist I worked with, Claire Russo, had done her research. She verified every detail. She interviewed Mrs. Valencia, confirmed the gas station incident, even tracked down my old landlord who vouched that I'd put myself through school without family support. The story included the photo of me at 12, standing near the dumpster with a torn backpack and cracked sneakers. It included quotes from my speech at the wedding. It included the letter from my father, blurred only slightly to preserve privacy, and Emily's permission to mention that she had reached out to me afterward. Claire was careful, precise, not a tabloid piece, not a scandal-bait hit job, just truth, told clean and unfiltered. And that's why it exploded, because it wasn't loud. It was honest. Comments poured in. People saying it reminded them of their own estrangement, their own moments of being dismissed or replaced or silenced. Others praised the restraint I'd shown at the wedding. A few guessed which vineyard it had been, though I never confirmed it. But what mattered more were the private messages I received. Dozens of them. From people who'd been disowned, forgotten, labeled problem children by families who refused to take accountability. But the best one? That came from a Kensington, Emily's older brother. His name was Mark, and he didn't mince words. I always thought Caleb was fake. Too polished, too rehearsed. Now I know why. I'm sorry they did that to you. My parents are furious, not at you, but at Caleb. They feel like they were lied to, used. They're meeting with Emily today. Thought you'd want to know. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because just 2 days later, another email arrived. From Emily. Isaac. I read the article. I saw the comments. I showed Caleb. He exploded. Said you ambushed him. Said you made it all sound worse than it was. But you didn't. You didn't even share everything. And that's what made me realize you're telling the truth. He asked me to choose. I chose. I'm staying at my parents' place for now. The marriage is being annulled. I'm sorry it had to happen like this. But thank you for not letting me step into that lie with blinders on. Emily. I read the message 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat in silence for a long while. Because I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't gloating. I was remembering. I was remembering the day I stood in our hallway at 12 years old, holding a gas station candy bar in my hand, thinking they have to come back. They have to. And now, nearly 2 decades later, the family that left me behind had finally tasted what it meant to lose control of the story. It wasn't over. Because 3 days after the article dropped, my parents called. I don't know how they got my number. Maybe through an old contact, or maybe they finally started paying attention to the places I'd spoken at. But when I saw unknown number, I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. It was my mom. Her voice was trembling, not with sadness, but fury. Isaac, how dare you? We invited you. We tried to be civil. And you humiliated us. You've ruined Caleb's life. Emily's parents are threatening legal action over the gifts, the deposits, the reputation. You think this is justice? It's cruelty. Vindictive, petty cruelty. I hope you're happy. I hope you're proud of yourself. Then my dad got on the line. His voice wasn't angry. It was quiet, almost defeated. You always were too soft. I should have known you'd grow into the kind of man who'd twist a moment into a weapon. Congratulations. You've destroyed your family. Don't ever call us again. Then he hung up. I stared at the wall for a while, wondering if the words would sting, if they'd echo like they used to. But they didn't. Because I didn't destroy my family. They destroyed the version of me that still needed them. And that was the difference. I stood up, walked to my desk, pulled open the drawer, and took out the photo one last time. The 12-year-old boy who had no idea what he would grow into. I smiled at him. Then I put the photo away. Not because I was burying the past, but because I'd finally finished writing the ending. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments. First, it was whispers, mutual acquaintances from my hometown reaching out, people I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Some messaged me privately with shock, others with guilt. I had no idea. I thought you moved for college. Your parents always said you were difficult. Then came the social media shifts. My parents, who'd spent years curating their image online, suddenly went dark. Family photos began disappearing from their pages. The proud parents of Caleb and Emily banner vanished. And the most telling sign? Caleb's entire wedding album was deleted overnight. No explanation. Just gone. I found out later through a quiet LinkedIn update that Caleb had taken a leave of absence from his company. Personal matters, the blurb read. But I knew better. Emily had followed through with the annulment. She moved in temporarily with her brother and eventually returned to her studies. She sent me a short message weeks later. I'm rebuilding. It's messy, but it's mine. Thank you again. I hope you're doing okay. I was. Better than okay, actually. The nonprofit invited me to become a regular contributor. I began working with them part-time, helping organize outreach for other estranged young adults. I started writing, not just articles, but a book. The working title? Ghost Son, What Happens When They Pretend You Never Existed. I didn't write it for revenge. I wrote it for the kid I used to be. For the kids still out there, quietly packing a bag they'll never unpack because they're afraid even their footsteps are too loud. One day, I received a letter. Not from my parents. Not from Caleb. From Mrs. Valencia. Still written in her loopy, generous cursive. Dear Isaac, I clipped out your article and read it twice. Then I put it on the wall of my classroom, right above the desk where I keep extra snacks for students who never bring lunch. I tell them about you sometimes, not by name, but your story. That sometimes, being kind isn't just about helping someone up. It's about remembering them when everyone else forgets. I'm so proud of you. Love, Mrs. V. That one made me cry. Not the silent tears I was used to. Real ones. The kind that cracked something open inside. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was proving anything anymore. I wasn't a shadow. I wasn't the forgotten. I was here. I had survived. And now, I was living. So when people ask me how it felt, standing in front of my family and showing them the truth, I just smile. Because the truth? The best revenge isn't watching them crumble. It's watching yourself rise, in full daylight, while they're still trying to rewrite the dark. And I've never looked back.